So there are going to be a lot of 3080 Ti videos live on YouTube. Let's face it, we're going to need to say it out live. Nvidia have launched an RTX 3080 Ti. And yet there really aren't enough 3080s around at the moment to kind of be able to cope with demand. It's going to cost 1,049 GBP, or basically $1,200, which is a lot more money than the original RTX 3080. And that's before we even start talking about scalpers and miners and the eBay trend, and it's all a bit nuts. So in reality, has the 3080 Ti come at the right time, completely the wrong time, and is it completely the wrong price? So welcome to another one of my videos, and I've already said all that stuff, but essentially the 3080 Ti, aesthetically speaking, it's not any different to the 3080. There's the obvious difference on the actual backplate, and then there's another very, very minor piece of engraving further on in the cooler, but essentially it's exactly the same card. Now, in all of the correspondence and like reviewers' guides and stuff that Nvidia sent, they were comparing it to the 2080 Ti, which it's kind of its successor. Now, the good news about this Ti is it's not replacing the 3080, it's just joining the family in between the 3080 and then the 3090. Now, normally with a Ti increment, there's not a massive amount of difference under the hood. But amazingly with this one, there's a little bit more going on than, we first thought, imagined, or, whatever you would like to call it. So the Ti is 12 extra shader modules, which give you 48 extra tensor cores, 12 extra ray tracing cores, and 1,536 extra CUDA cores. I can remember back in the day when 1,536 CUDA cores was a top-end card. It's actually kind of nuts. But then the text unit quote has gone up from 272 to 320, and you get an extra 16 ROPs to play with as well. The video memory, so the VRAM's gone up from 10 to 12 gigabyte. But they've not just given you 2 gigabyte extra. The bit rate's gone up from 320 up to 384 bit. So you've got more bandwidth there as well, which correlates into 760 gigabits a second on the 3080 up to 912 on the 3080 Ti. So if you put that in a side-by-side graph, you can kind of get an idea about what's going on. But then another graph that I can give you is basically the hardware difference between a 3080 and a 3080 Ti. So you can get a chance to see all of the extra things that are going on under the hood. The last bit though is, sadly, it is 62% more expensive. So that is a number to hold dear, because it's 62% more expensive than the 3080, which then brings it up to, in GBP, £1,049 MSRP, although that is the price that Nvidia are going to be selling them at, or $1,199. Now, you do need to remember that the AIB cards will be more money, or at least most of them will be more money. The ones I've reviewed were a lot more money, which is why you're probably going to end up wanting to go and watch that video if you are interested, because these are two of the top-end ones. And these are north of £1,750. Yeah, £700 plus extra. Whoa. Yeah, I enjoyed making that video. Or I will do, because I've not done it yet. But anyway, so yes, so that's the price Nvidia are going to be selling them at. It's the MSRP. It's the introductory price. It's the price at the bottom, and then they go up from there. That's something to kind of remember. It doesn't mean every single card has to be that price. The other problem is e-tailers are going to charge a little bit more money as well, depending on stock levels and all that sort of stuff. Although I did talk to Nvidia today, and they did seem very confident that there was going to be a good amount of stock. Have to choose my words wisely, because I don't want it to, they think that if you're going to want one, you're going to be able to get one. Whether that's day 1 or whether that's day 5, I don't know. I think we all know there's going to be big hustle and bustle, and there's going to be bots present and all of that sort of stuff on launch, and it's an ever kind of evolving marketplace, which is kind of a sad thing. But anyway, when it comes to clock speeds, the 3080 runs a tiny bit slower than the 3080. Sorry, the 3080 Ti runs a tiny bit slower than the 3080. Obviously, less stuff under the hood of the 3080, crank up the clock speeds. More stuff under the hood, they turn the clock speeds down a little bit. Gives a little bit of wiggle room for the vendors to have their overclocked cards and all that kind of thing. But the fact that with this one, it was still knocking over the, I mean, you saw the maximum was 1920, but we got an average of like 1821. So 1800 megahertz with all those extra bits, it's not too bad. The fact that I am saying it runs slower kind of then leads you into the thinking that it's not going to be that quick. But stay tuned, because we do have a lot of performance stuff to talk to you about. The other important thing is there's a lot of information on the website. There's a lot more graphs. We've brought in some new games. I've got some side-by-side stuff to show you in a second. There's a lot of things for you to digest. And then at the end, me talking, my thoughts. There's a lot going on there as well. Power draw, it's up the top of the graph, so you can see it's not that far away from a 3090. We have tested more 3090s than that, but we just put one at the top of the graph to give you an eyeball to kind of grab hold of, and then like some carefully chosen graphics cards underneath. The other thing I do want to say is, when I say we've tested more 3090s, that you do need to remember that a lot of the cards arrive, get tested, and then get moved on to another reviewer. That's something a lot of people don't seem to understand. But that is what's going on underneath the hood. I've got some lovely side-by-side video footage for you of the graphics cards working in motion, which is something visual for you to grab hold of, and then I will talk to you some more after that. So first up, Cyberpunk. Now, we're using a very specific section here, but we've not got any of the goodies turned on, so no ray tracing or DLSS. But there are ray tracing and DLSS results on the website if you want to have a look. I'll also put them at the end. Now, you can see that the 3080 Ti has just panned in, and I wanted to do this so that you can see the difference between a 30 and a 3080 Ti. When we bring the graph up, you can see there's a healthy amount of difference. It's not going to set the world on fire, but we need to remember frames per second are a lot harder to kind of get, especially when you are running 4K, which is what this test was done in. Moving swiftly on to Watch Dogs, again in 4K, but without all the bells and whistles, so this hasn't got ray tracing or hasn't got DLSS. Again, I will show you the graphs at the end. But I just thought this was a really nice visual way of being able to put the two cards side by side so that you can see the performance difference. Then, when we bring the graph up, you can see that it pretty much tops the graphs. 6900 XT there in third place, which sits above all of the 3080s as well, which I thought, because we did do a lot more 3080 testing. We just put the Founders Edition in there so that the graph wasn't enormous. But also these have all been retested within literally the last 3 days. 3080 versus 3080 Ti, you can see there's a fair bit of difference there. You've obviously got the ray tracing, and it makes life a bit more interesting with ray tracing, where you've got 12 extra ray tracing cores. So there's lots of things that kind of progress. You do also need to remember is that DLSS is getting better and better and better and better. And if you play a game that supports DLSS and you have an RTX card, I would say turn it on. The other thing I would say though is there are normally a few options. Stick with balanced and you'll get the best looking performance. If you go up to performance or extra performance, it can degrade actually the picture quality. So that's just a kind of hint for you there. Other games, and I will pop them up all over the place so that you can have a look. And this is where it really comes into its own. Now I'm going to show you F1 2020, because at the end F1 2020, this is an AMD game. So it means that the 3080 Ti is not at the top. This is the part where we're adding balance so that people can't say that I'm just talking nicely about Nvidia all the time. But then the other thing with the other games is a broad term that I want to talk about, or broad thing that I want to talk about, and that's I've been doing a lot of 3080 Ti versus 3080 kind of comparisons. But in reality, this thing is so close to the 3090, it's actually a better way to compare it. Something that I didn't particularly like in their online conference thing was the fact that they referred to this as its flagship gaming card. And the reason why I don't like that is I feel bad for people that have bought the 3090. They do say that the 3090 is more of a content creation card, and it's got more VRAM and it leads into things better like that. And I can completely understand. I'm not being argumentative. I just think for someone that's invested in a 3090 to suddenly it not be called a flagship, I think it's a bit unfair. So I think they need to be a little bit clearer from the start about the way things are going. Now, there's going to be lots of arguments why they didn't say it was a gaming card and why it is and it's not. But, you need to kind of like broaden the terms here. It would almost have been nicer to have just called the 3090 the Titan. So that then with a Titan, it's more of a content creation kind of card. You're paying extra for extra bandwidth and extra VRAM and all of that sort of thing. So I think it just muddied the waters for me personally a little bit. And I don't like the fact that, some people might feel a little bit out of place now. The 3090 is still there for like super high-end gaming and ultra enthusiasts and stuff like that. I just think to call this the gaming flagship, I think needed a little bit more clarification earlier on. But anyway, I digress. We will move on. So the 3080 Ti, I originally felt that with this card, I was wondering why they didn't use the silicon to have made more of the other cards. I know there are people that are still waiting for a 3080. There's an argument to be said that it's not Nvidia's fault that some people have paid for a product or pre-ordered for a product that they still haven't got in that. Maybe they shouldn't have been so many pre-orders around the 3080 launch time. And there's definitely some very large grounds for that and another video and debate. And I also, when I first started looking at this, it's so much more money than the 3080. It's 60% more money, but you get not even 20% more performance. And there's definitely grounds for that argument as well. But then I did start looking at the 3090 a little bit more and thinking to myself that you can have nigh on 3090 gaming performance for £1,050. Now, I think it's a shame that we're back up to the point where graphics cards are at 1,000 plus, because I really liked the aggressive standpoint when the 3080 first launched. Obviously, low stock, COVID, Suez Canal, all of that sort of stuff, scalpers, miners, has made the graphics card market an absolute war zone, and it's something that I'm particularly not like. None of us are happy about it. I hate it. You kind of buy a graphics card that you can get rather than necessarily the graphics card that you want. And that's going to be a really big point that I'm going to be bringing up with these. But at the end of the day, it is a cracking card. It does perform almost like the card that they've got up there at £1,500 plus. Now, in that does then turn the 3090 into even more of a Goldilocks product, because it's kind of up there to make the other ones look even better. This, in reality, does kind of make the 3080 a really good purchase, because it depends on the kind of angle that you're going for. Are you going to be playing 4K? Do you want a 1440p high refresh rate kind of card? And the other kind of thing that I'm kind of thinking of is, the fact that we're going to be getting a load of these does then give people a chance to there's another wave of stock. I just wish that this new wave of stock came with a very big wave of the lower end cards. Now, I know we're going to be getting the 3070 Ti as well, but I do think that when releasing a new card, you maybe wanted to, and it's not necessarily their fault, so I'm talking broad terms, that maybe there should have been less pre-orders unfulfilled on the other ones. Now, that's a whole market and channel kind of issue. But at the end of the day, if you're thinking to yourself, I've got a 3080, should I upgrade? No, don't be silly. And basically, because you've got a cracking card already. But if you're kind of sat there back with one of the other older cards and you've been trying to get a 3080 and haven't been able to and refused to play scalpers prices, or rather how crazy the scalpers prices can be, then this at the launch price could be a good place to jump in, because the Founders Edition is a cracking card. It's only going to get muddied by the fact that in the end of the day, the branded cards are going to warrant significantly more money. And that is then kind of a problem that you're going to have to play with at home yourself, because it's all going to come down to budget. A new wave of stock does give you some options. One of the good things it does give you, though, is the fact that you're not buying an overpriced 3080. You're kind of getting, if you can get it from a retailer, a semi-decent priced 3080 Ti, and you are going to get some performance increases with it as well. So the difficulty with this is there's an awful lot of politics going on because of the way that the market goes. So with a vanilla 3080 Ti, costs 60% more, but you don't get 60% more performance. But that's normally the way the higher end cards go anyway. If you were to compare it to the 3090, you get almost 3090 performance for 2/3 of the price, which can only be a good thing. Or let's just kind of put a ballpoint on it and say it's £400 cheaper than a 3090 and performs almost the same. So in that kind of angle, it does look really nice. We are just going to have to hope, and I say that with positivity in my voice, that there are going to be a fair few of them around, and then that may give you guys at home some options. I'm not going to go into like the whole eBay and all of that kind of, because we know people are going to buy them and then try and sell them on, but let's hope there's enough of them that then you don't need to go onto eBay afterwards. So as a 3080 upgrade, it's got a fair bit of upgrade there, but you pay a fair whack for the privilege. But that upgrade takes you up to almost a 3090 performance, but with not too bad a pricing when in comparison. So there are a couple of ways to look at it. I did come into this, I'm completely honest with you, I was coming to this kind of like very against it. And then when I calmed down and looked at the graphs, there are two very different camps that you can sit in, and it all depends on which one you want to go with. I still say the 3080 is an absolute cracker of a card if you can get them. And that's all we have to do, is pray at some point things are going to get better. I do talk a lot in my videos, but that's because I don't script and I actually honestly spurt all of this stuff out. So it's just brain farts, it's my thoughts. It's like we're talking at a pub. All of my videos are like this, sadly, but if you like that, please don't forget to like and comment, because it does help. If you are interested in the 3080 Ti's, on launch, there's going to be a video live for these two, and that's more of a chatty video with just graphs kind of chucked in there, because I talk about their pricing a lot more, which is something I'm at the moment particularly uncomfortable with, and I have several different things that I want to kind of address with my thought process on those. So that might be something that you would like to go and take a look at. But for now, thank you very much for tuning in on the RTX 3080 Ti review. Cracking card, a lot more money, a little bit more performance, but it's actually not that bad when you compare it to a 3090. So for now, this has been the tiniest one with you, with another video out. Ding! Love you, sis.